Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host with the moster, Dusty O'Connell, and joining me is my long-suffering co-host, in-house analyst, Vikings blogger extraordinaire, and generally useful human, Arif Hassan. How are you, Arif?
Turns out I'm only useful in particular contexts.
No, I'd say you're generally useful. I don't... Well, all right.
I mean, if you ask me to play... We should just address this right away. If you ask me to play cornerback, I'm not going to be useful unless I get some athletic training. I'm still confident, actually, that I could play pretty well if I knew how to run, which I know is a pretty bold statement.
I think I'd like you better at outside corner rather than slot, just because I'm not, convinced of your ability to change direction as quickly as maybe a wide receiver can. I think that there's a decent chance that you could be faked out.
I think it's the opposite, actually.
Really?
The issue, both times I fell, we were running straightaways, ostensibly where the sideline would be of those parking lots. So the actual issue was the straightaway. I think I do very well with change of direction. Despite those falls, I would say, generally speaking, I've got excellent balance and center of gravity. And the reason I say this is because when I'm walking in extremely rocky terrain, or when I'm rock climbing, which is a thing I used to do, or when I'm mountain climbing, which is a thing I've done twice, I have fallen significantly less than my compatriots, many of whom have much more rock climbing, mountain climbing experience than me.
So you've got good ankles.
It's really just a matter of not leaning forward when I run.
You've got good ankles. It's just a matter of not crossing yourself up on the...
Yeah, exactly. Also, when I was watching those videos, because I, of course, watched it again and again and again, I was running too wide. I don't remember running that wide before.
Arif Hassan runs too wide. Would you say you were wide left?
Yeah, I was wide left. I was wide 2 left feet.
That would be an excellent Wheel of Fortune before and after. Norse Code is brought to you by you, the listener. And in particular, one more listener who joins the fold of Patreon contributors at the $3 a month level, Kevin Riggle. Thank you so much, Kevin. Your $3 every month will go to making sure that we can continue to bring you the most digital multimedia content. And by most, I mean the occasional episode during the off season, but more to the point, pays for things like keeping the website live, and if Arif decides that he needs internet at training camp, which it turns out actually makes his job much easier, then we're able to outfit him with things like that, and ongoing equipment and service upgrades, so that Norse Code remains the best podcast that it can be, and ensures that it is never dethroned as the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. So if you would like to join the Norse Code contributor family, then go to patreon.com/NorseCode or paypal.me/NorseCode, and then you can make either a recurring monthly contribution or a one-time contribution, respectively, in any amount that you desire. And we suggest about $3.50. Keep the old Loch Ness Monster at bay, but, Kevin does not feel bound by those requests, and neither should you. The most important thing is that you contribute, because the more monthly contributions we get in particular, the easier it is for us to plan and project and figure out more cool and exciting things we can bring you year after year. And we'd like to really kick it up a notch for season 5. Can you believe it? This will be our 5th season covering the Vikings. And
for a lot of long-running series, the 4th and 5th seasons are often the best. Simpsons, Buffy, other things, I'm sure.
Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh, yes. Yes. See? This is great. Hitting our stride, guys.
I'd say year after year, our show has gotten better. And it's not just because the Vikings are less bad. I'd like to believe it's because we have gotten less bad at covering them. Well, mostly you have gotten less bad at covering them. And I have gotten less bad at wasting your time as you talk about them. But
yeah, maybe. I think I've got more podcast presence than before.
I should say so. You're like a.
I was attempting to take a compliment poorly, not attempting to throw shade at you. But of course, we cannot avoid throwing shade at each other. So I guess that's what happened.
It's true. Our underlying acrimony for one another cannot be hidden, no matter how hard we try. Oh my gosh, this is going really great so far.
Yeah, no, this is a good
we're
episode.
we're killing it. Not a great deal to talk about this week. Just figured we'd check in. So you've got a little bit of, I guess, original reportage on OTAs, correct?
Not that much original reporting. Mostly my colleague at Zone Coverage, Sam Ekstrom, has been at OTAs. Also me. But there are a lot of interesting things to sort of derive from OTAs. So we know that there's a lot of depth chart battles for the Vikings there are every year for OTAs. The ones we're paying a lot of attention to are along the interior offensive line, who's starting at guard, who's starting at center. That wide receiver, who's going to be the third wide receiver, fourth wide receiver, etc. And nickel quarterback, I think, is probably one that a lot of people are paying attention to. And I'll also say that we'll probably pay attention to running back. We know how the depth chart is going to shake out, barring any, something unusual like an injury, or I guess Dalvin Cook sucks would also be unusual. But running back will be kind of interesting to watch. So there's something to say kind of about each of those. The first, I think, is that Mike Zimmer has praised Laquan Treadwell a lot. And coaches praise players. And I think that Minnesota fans go a little bit too far when they say, Mike Zimmer doesn't go out of his way to praise players that often. Usually he's very hard on them. Well, yeah, it is more meaningful when Mike Zimmer praises a player than when generic coach X praises their own player. But, it's not ultimately meaningful. I mean, he's praised players that have not, panned out. And I think that criticism of a lot of players, too. I think Sharif Floyd is maybe the best example of it. But yeah, it is still noteworthy that he praised Laquan Treadwell, and in particular praised Laquan Treadwell in some aspects of play that he had mentioned earlier were aspects of play he was struggling to get, in particular route depth. So if Laquan Treadwell can get onto the field, I think that we're moving our way towards a win, right? I don't know if we're moving our way towards justifying a first-round pick, but if he could be, a reliable third receiver, that's pretty good. So that's one thing to watch for.
And it's funny because the Vikings, every year in and year out, it seems like we always manage to somehow get the best player available at every position, And so for Mike Zimmer to come out now during OTAs when, some of these guys, like Pat Elflein and Nick Easton are, well, actually, I guess Nick Easton has seen 1 year of action before, but for Zimmer to come out and be like, they're terrible, they all stink, I don't know why we drafted these guys, would really be kind of a digression from the team's general PR stance.
Yeah. No, that's, yeah. So it's kind of interesting because obviously the team's PR will just use it, right? But, I think it's meaningful. Just not as meaningful, I think, as a lot of Vikings fans want to provide it.
Well, okay, so one thing we can potentially glean from OTAs, Christopher Gates was writing about this at Daily Norseman, is that Joe Berger is probably not going to be the starting center.
Yeah, I think probably not. I think that's correct. I want to say also that is something that, obviously the Vikings were still figuring out. So I think part of it, so I don't think Berger took any snaps at center in week 1 of OTAs. And so that's kind of what's drawing upon that. And so there's currently a competition, as we see in OTAs right now, between newly drafted center Pat Elflein former 6th-round pick Nick Easton, and that's it between the two of them. But I think that they're also competing against with how good the Viking staff already know Joe Berger to be. I think they're trying him out at guard to see what those combinations of linemen look like. What does it look like when Elflein and Berger are on the field together at center and guard, respectively? What does it look like when Easton and Berger are on the field together at center and guard, respectively? And I think that's what they're competing against. And I think we'll find out, what that looks like compared to what Berger and Searles looks like at center and guard, respectively, maybe this next week or maybe in training camp. So I think that's part of it, too. So I think it is likely that we're going to see an Elflein Berger center guard lineup come week 1. But I also think that part of this is that they know what they have at center for Joe Berger. And so they kind of want to see what these combinations look like along the interior offensive line.
Okay, so are there other position battles shaping up during OTAs, or is it still kind of generally too early to tell?
I think in some respects, some of the position battles are too early to tell. I think that safety, for example, is one that a lot of people want to be watching. And from what I can understand at OTAs, nothing much is happening there in terms of a competition. I'm sure that a competition will develop because I don't think that, Sendeo's hold on the starting spot next to Harrison Smith is, rock solid or anything like that. But there is one more competition to take a look at. It's the nickel corner competition. So Mike Zimmer also went out of his way to praise Mackenzie Alexander. He praised his technique, that's for sure, but most notable was that he was praising Alexander's attitude and approach to the game. And Matthew Collarity, 1500 ESPN, reported that some players were getting rubbed the wrong way a little bit by Alexander's, attitude. I'm sure it wasn't like that big a deal or anything like that, but the way that he's approached the game is a lot better. But also, I think that Mike Zimmer was also just praising Mac Alexander's ability to play right now. So he and Terrence Newman have been switching off of the nickel corner position, and for right now, we've got Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes on the outside. I'm obviously worried about that because I've never been very confident in Waynes. Obviously I want to be proved wrong, but having Mackenzie Alexander legitimately compete for that nickel corner spot is a good thing, and I think that if we continue to go through OTAs and go through to the point where we get to training camp where Alexander and Newman are rotating in and out, that's a really, really good sign because it means that Newman is not definitively beating out Alexander for the nickel corner spot, which I think is a really, really good thing for Mackenzie Alexander.
All right, so Jabari Price and Trey Roberson, do either, neither, or both of them make the roster?
Vikings fans are bigger fans of Jabari Price than I am. I'm a bigger fan of Trey Roberson than most Vikings fans. All that being said, there's a very good chance that Jabari Price is a better corner than Trey Roberson. I'm mostly kind of fascinated with how good he's become at becoming a cornerback, given that he was a quarterback in college. And so I'm kind of just fascinated with the whole story, and I've kind of fallen in love with the story. I think that, Roberson's got more upside. I think he's a little bit taller, which is not, necessarily that difficult to do at cornerback for Jabari Price. He's faster, not, I think, as fast as a lot of people think. You see running quarterbacks, they look really fast in the highlight reels, and they almost always, unless they're like RG3, they almost always run like a 4.5. And he, I think, also ran a 4.5, 4.52 or something like that. I'm sure I'll have to look it up and I'll be wrong. But, he's fast-ish, but he's not cornerback fast. So he's faster than Jabari Price, but not by a ton. And so I don't know if his athletic skills are so much superior that if he's legitimately just playing worse, that they're going to bank on his potential over Jabari Price, especially because Price has demonstrated his ability to play on special teams. I'm kind of curious how that works out. I feel obligated to, and it'll be fun to put my chips in this, but I feel obligated to bet on Trey Roberson. But, all that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if I was wrong.
What about the long shot guys? What about like Terrell Singfield and Horace Richardson? Do either of them make it to week 1?
No.
Indeed.
I don't know that much about Horace Richardson. The Vikings value him a lot. I think they gave him a $20,000 UDFA contract, which is very high because a lot of them are $5,000 guaranteed. But that being said, I mean, there's a lot of cornerbacks to get through. It wouldn't be that shocking if he got past, Trey Roberson and Jabari Price, but I think the odds are pretty long. So I'll say that. So I'll say out of the long shots at corner, he's maybe the most interesting one. Maybe because he's an unknown. But I don't see it for Terrell Senningfield. I mean, he couldn't learn technique for the longest time for him to be able to turn his prodigious speed into anything meaningful. And he's one of the fastest players in the NFL. I mean, he unofficially clocked at 4.19. I think the Vikings had him at 4.31 at his pro day. I wouldn't be surprised if, in terms of times, it was somewhere in between. I don't know. But he's a super fast player, and he can't turn that into even sticking onto a practice squad as a receiver. So they converted him to cornerback. And I'm not so confident that he'll be able to learn cornerback if he doesn't have the ability to learn the technical skills to be a receiver, which is, I think, one of the differences between him and a different type of position convert like Jerick McKinnon or Trey Roberson, which is that they learned the technical skills needed to make that position position change pretty quickly.
Didn't Zinkfield play in the CFL for a while?
He might have. I think he mostly played as a returner. I don't know if he played as a cornerback or a receiver. I'm sure we could look that up.
But so it seems as though he's being asked to do things that are so far out of his skill set that he just it's like poor Moritz. He just doesn't have the technical background to excel in the NFL.
Right, and I think the difference between him and Moritz, not to say that Moritz is on the path to success right now or anything, is that with Moritz we just didn't know if he had the ability to overcome that. Whereas with Zinkfield, we've got years and years. I mean, he entered the league in 2013, so we've got years and years of experience, knowing that he doesn't have the capability to learn the technical things that he needs to in order to be a receiver. So that's the difference. But I think that the comparison is apt.
All right. Let's turn our attention towards the rookie signing situation. The Vikings have announced one official rookie signing, but there are kind of expectations of two more. There's Chris Tomasin has details on contracts for Bucky Hodges and Pat Elflein and Elijah Lee.
Yeah, so those are the three most recent to either agree to terms or sign with the Vikings. Elijah Lee and Elflein are expected to sign, where Hodges has already signed as of today. And then the Vikings have also signed 5 others. So that brings it up to 8 of the 11 draft picks having signed or agreed to terms with the Vikings. And the only reason I am actually interested in covering this is because there's a conflict that has still not been resolved between the NFLPA, the NFL Players Association, and the Minnesota Vikings. So that means the first player to sort of, I guess, break ranks was wide receiver Rodney Adams. And that, I guess, led to... so Chad Graff from the Pioneer Press indicated that Adams went, quote-unquote, rogue. But that led to the signings of Danny Isidora, Jaleel Johnson, Ifeadi Odenigbo, and Ben Gedeon, which has now also led to Bucky Hodges and presumably Pat Elflein and Elijah Lee. That still leaves, Dalvin Cook, importantly. And, man, there's 11 players in this draft class, so I'm, forgetting 2 of them off the top of my head right now. Probably Stacey Coley and definitely there. Another person. What's that?
You're almost there. Jack
Tocho.
Yes.
The toe. Yeah.
There it is. See, you knew.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if Jack Tocho's gonna. Oh, the Vikings just announced that Jack Tocho signed. They literally just announced it. So I was about to say I don't know if Jack Tocho will be able to hold out, given that he's a 7th-round pick, but he didn't because the Vikings officially announced the Pat Elflein signing, and then 20 seconds later, announced the Jack Tocho signing. So that's where we're at. It's Dalvin Cook and Stacy Coley. I bet Stacy Coley is going to fold.
Jack Tocho at Mojo Tocho on Twitter, which is a phenomenal handle.
Which, by the way, just phenomenal.
So what's what exactly is the holdup with the contract language? Because Tomasin tweeted a couple days ago that, today, that these contracts are the same as in past years when the union didn't complain, to use his words. What is the Players Association beefing about?
So I'm kind of curious about this. So someone brought up the theory that the Players Association is bringing this up with the Vikings now in response to the Vikings potentially tolling Teddy Bridgewater's contract after 6 games instead of a full year on PUP, which is a theoretical future possibility and not like the actual known future likelihood. But I kind of doubt it. I think so. What is happening is that there is some concern, and no one has really detailed the level of concern or what the kind of concern is or where it stems from. But there is some concern behind the nature of the offset language in the contract. So offset language, a lot of people have kind of learned the nature of offset language since the CBA was signed, because it's one of the only bargaining chips that rookies or teams really have when negotiating with each other. Offset language governs whether or not a team is on the hook to pay the rest of a guaranteed contract for a player that they cut if another team signs that player and assumes some or all of that guaranteed money. So, for example, if the Vikings for some reason had signed Michael Floyd to a 3-year, fully guaranteed $36 million contract, right? Why? Whatever. It's $12 million a year. The Vikings signed this guy, fully guaranteed the entire contract. And Floyd makes sure that there's no offset language in the contract. What that means is if the Vikings cut Floyd 2 years into the deal, they will still owe him that final $12 million for his 3rd year, even if another team picks him up and pays him $6 million. But if there's full offset language, then the Vikings only have to pay Floyd $6 million, while that other team that picked up Michael Floyd for a 1-year, $6 million contract pays out the full $6 million. So that's the difference. It doesn't. I'm pretty confident it doesn't affect cap calculations. It only affects cash payouts. So that is allowed, offset language in general. But the NFLPA is concerned that the offset language is overlapping somehow with prohibited terms. So the CBA outlines terms that you are not allowed to negotiate with rookies, things that cannot be in the contract. I don't know what all of these include. They could include, mandatory community appearances or something. I don't know. But that the offset language, which is allowed, is being paired prohibitively with some disallowed terms. And I'm not really sure what that means. Maybe that things offset if you don't do this or whatever. I'm not entirely sure. So that's what they're negotiating about, I guess. It's kind of difficult to parse, but I'm not going to say it's unimportant or trivial or obscure. It's important to prevent creep, essentially, of contract terms that are disallowed then being allowed. And they negotiate those contract terms for a reason in the CBA, so that teams don't abuse rookies with leveraged contract terms. So yeah, I wouldn't say that their concerns are trivial or anything like that, but I think that they're not going to win this battle by having the rookies hold out. So they're going to have to win it through arbitration.
So it's really not as much about the contracts as it is about the principle
about
of
precedence,
protecting the rookies from potentially being abused in the future. Okay, I get it. I think it's not Byzantine or confusing at all, is what I'm taking away from this.
Well, it's certainly confusing and Byzantine, but for a reason.
and it's in service of young players who, I guess God bless the union.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the whole point of having a union, right? Because individual players just do not have the leverage to be able to bargain. But there's some understanding that they should have, a good chunk of negotiation rights, and those are exercised through the union.
Well, so what's the deal with
just doing their job.
Dalvin Cook's contract, or lack thereof, since he is
he actually has the ability to hold out, given that he was the highest Viking picked. The issue, of course, is that the Vikings do have solutions at running back, making him less critical than most teams' first pick.
Okay, but the Vikings are pretty excited about him, and hopefully planning to rely on him somewhat this year. So is what's he holding out for? More money?
No, I think he's holding out because the NFLPA told the rookies not to sign. So
so he's like, okay.
He's got the ability to say no more than Jack Tocho did.
Okay. One last item that has been kind of ongoing that we haven't really discussed much on the show is Mike Zimmer and his 8 eye surgeries?
Yeah, it was 8th eye surgery. Yeah, it wasn't like he had 8 all at once.
Well, no, I think he was up to 2 or 3
else.
The last time we mentioned it. But during the offseason, he's gone under the knife numerous times, which, eye surgery?
Well, also during the offseason, it was revealed that he had gone under the knife another time during something like that. So yeah, there was secret surgeries too. Anyway, we're up to 8. They think that this is the final one. They thought that about the 6th one as well. And I believe they thought that about the 4th one. But for real this time. They cleaned up scar tissue and removed some cataracts, I guess. I'm not medical doctor, dude, so I don't even know what cataracts are, except that they happen in their eyes and they tend to afflict older people more than younger people. And affect vision. I remember reading that. Anyway, that happened, and now he is taking the doctor's advice with regards to rest and whatnot, which means he was not at OTAs. He had film delivered to him, presumably through electronic means, and he was watching the film after given permission, essentially, from the doctors that this is okay within the context of your recovery. There's a piece, I want to say, in the Star Tribune where it goes over how the coaches have handled it a little bit. So there's no interim head coach right now. It's not like, the Dallas game where you had, Mike Prefer running everything. It's more that every coach has a segmented amount of, responsibilities, and that they kind of handle the top level stuff together, or they just defer to the plan that Zimmer set or something like that. But Andre Patterson, who was Mike Zimmer's very close friend, Mike Zimmer says in the article that Andre may know him better than his own son, Adam, that Andre Patterson is providing the vision or the voice of Mike Zimmer while there, and they have a lot of conversations. And Andre Patterson was the one that may have potentially actually just convinced Mike Zimmer to actually listen to the doctors this time. And that's really important, because not listening to the doctors, I believe, is responsible for the 3rd or 4th or 5th or all of them surgeries. It's interesting. Andy Carlson brings up the fact that, we could be having a conversation about Mike Zimmer being forced to retire. He addressed those rumors head on and said that, no, he will not be forced to retire or anything like that, which, of course he's going to say that, but that is reassuring, I guess.
So in the transcript of the conference call, Zimmer addresses this is weird to think about, but when someone asks him, where's your vision itself at right now, he replies, "In the right eye, there's a gas bubble in there, so you can't see through the gas bubble. When I had the checkup on Wednesday, the bubble had reduced from 95% to now it's a little less than 60. So when the bubble is not there, I can see. But if I'm looking straight ahead, I can't see because the bubble is there." So he apparently has like only peripheral vision because he has to look around. A gas bubble in his freaking eye. And
so is that there intentionally, or will it go away? Are they going to remove it?
Well, he goes on to say, the big thing is when the bubble dissolves, which it will, however long it takes. The biggest question is, now that we got the pressure thing under control, will the retina stay in place? Because the bubble is kind of like a Band-Aid to make sure the retina stays in place, so it stays in the right spot as it heals. As long as when the bubble dissolves, the retina stays attached.
Super clever.
Yeah, then everything should be good to go. So it's a
Band-Aid that peels itself.
It's like a dissolving stitch inside your freaking eye. Ugh.
Science, man.
I have like goosebumps just reading that. I can't imagine. So Mike Zimmer, 100% natural badass, USDA approved, I think is the lesson we can take away from this. But please, Mr. Zimmer, listen to your doctors. You don't have to text your players every 5 minutes. Yeah. He even answers. He's like, the players are probably getting tired of me texting them because I text them things that I see on tape, and then I talk to the coaches and make sure they relay it. But get well soon, Mike. And 1 eye or 2, we look forward to seeing you back. And also, maybe call your son.
Right. Yes. I read that quote, and I was like, is this alarming, or is it just like cute that he and Andre know each other so well? I don't know.
Right? Adam's like listening to this conference call, just like staring off into space, like, ugh, this is my life.
I started working for you, Dad. How is this still the case?
Well, the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Oh boy. Boy, is that it for Vikings news?
We didn't talk about the Teddy video, right? Because, now that we're doing this, was it semi-monthly, bi-monthly, bi-weekly?
Bi-weekly, semi-monthly.
Okay. Now that we're doing this bi-weekly, actually, it would be both. No, never mind. Now that we're doing this bi-weekly, I don't think we covered the Teddy video in our last podcast because it hadn't happened yet.
That's true. Like the day after the episode dropped, Teddy threw a ball. Actually, more than one.
Yeah, which is fantastic news. If he'd only thrown one and was like, nah, too hard.
He throws it and his shoulder separates and he's like, no, forget it. Let's hold off. That would have been much worse, but that did not happen. Gratefully.
So Chip Scoggins at the Star Tribune wrote an article that I haven't read yet because I hit my daily article limit at the Star Tribune. Sorry, guys, I have not subscribed. But using other means to read these articles, means that are readily available to everyone. Please pay your journalists. I would, let's see, well, I'll read the article right now. What does it mean? Is he closer to returning than most of us knew or anticipated? Sounds like he's not. Yeah, that's fair. That's the article. It's a long one, but there's not much more than that. So what ended up happening was the Vikings tweeted out a, 38-second video of him throwing a ball at OTAs. This OTA session in particular was closed to the media. It was not part of a team practice, but instead part of his prescribed rehab process. He then went to his doctor, I guess in Texas, I want to say, the next day, so he wasn't going to be available at OTAs. And one of the reasons that Spielman ended up saying that video should be published or allowing the Vikings to publish that video is to foreclose some of the questions that would come if the Viking media showed up and Teddy wasn't there at all. So It was to provide some level of information that Teddy is attacking rehab, or whatever weird verb we use when we're talking about football players in rehab.
He's tackling rehab.
Attack it with enthusiasm unknown to man. Nope, that's Harbaugh. Sorry. So what it means is that Teddy exists and that he's on the rehab schedule. That's a good thing. He was as he went to the doctor cleared him for side-to-side or lateral movement, which is both a good thing and like a somewhat discouraging thing, having just seen him throw a ball as if he were an NFL quarterback. So it's good because it means that progress is definitively occurring at a pretty good schedule for the kind of thing that this is, which is a dislocated friggin' knee. It is a kind of frustrating thing because it does mean he has a long way to go, and that it is unlikely that he'll be ready before the 6-week cutoff that exists for PUP, the physically unable to perform list. Which means there's every likelihood he's going to enter training camp on the PUP list and the season on the PUP list, but also a decent likelihood that he'll be taken off the PUP list partway into the season, and he'll be active. So I think it's 6 to 8 weeks before. So you're on the PUP list for the regular season. You're not available for the first 6 to 8 weeks, and then you declare that the player can practice, and then you've got another 3 weeks before you can put that player on your active. But before you're required to put that player on your active roster. So that is, I guess, up to 11 weeks or as little as 7. Nice and clear. So once that happens, I think he'll be on the active roster. Like, I think that this indicates that he's on a schedule that will allow him to be on an active roster.
Well, crucial Twitter follow at Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, more or less agrees with you. He has an article on the San Diego Union Tribune website where he reveals that he has seen the video, and he writes, in viewing the video, Teddy's left knee looks stiff as he plants, and he has a stomping gait that fails to dampen through the knee. He doesn't flex or sit down with the knee as he sets to throw, and he does not fully shift weight to step into his throw on follow-through. So he's treating it gingerly, it sounds like. Footwork and balance are key for a quarterback, and he is not there yet, but this is a good start. He has a reasonable chance to become a top quarterback again, but it will be hard to become a premier runner again. Why would he say again there? I don't know that Teddy was ever a premier runner.
So I've always thought a good way to like really think about the way that people talk about Teddy, because Andy Benoit over at MMQB does this too, where he talks about Teddy Bridgewater as if the presumption is that he's a running quarterback. Benoit did take it the other direction. He was like, unlike what a lot of people think, Teddy's not a read option quarterback. And it's like, which people think that? Who? But
some say.
Who thought he was? Yeah, some say. Who thought he was a read option quarterback? Like, no one thought that. But anyway, it's a good way to compare it is he's got pretty similar athleticism to Derek Carr. He just has better running vision. And like that's it. Like they both run exclusively as a result of scrambling. And they're both like kind of quick when you compare them to quarterbacks from like the 90s and early 2000s, but no longer kind of quick. I mean, like all quarterbacks are now about this athletic, unless they're like Zach Mettenberger. So yeah, that's where we're at. I guess he's not going to be a premier runner ever, before or after.
Well, we were all counting on it, so
yeah, it didn't make him a better runner. That's crazy, man. That's wow. Yeah, I mean, I assume like the actual takeaway here is probably, yeah, he's not going to be as forwardly mobile or whatever. He's not going to be as agile or as speedy as he once was, whatever that level was. And that's going to be a problem because his athleticism in the pocket has been pretty good. One of the things that separates him athletically from Derek Carr is that he gets a better start not as a result of any inherent like burst, but because he just knows better when he needs to run and where to run to. Carr always had the problem of running into sacks or being a little late to run out of the pocket, and Teddy's better at it. So, I mean, he looks a little bit more athletic, too, because he's got a better head start, because he knows when to start. And so that ability to his game, which at some point draft analysts were comparing to Aaron Rodgers, which I think is an apt and fair comparison, so long as we understand that Aaron Rodgers was like not who he is today coming out. But that, he's mobile. He uses that mobility to create space. He uses that space generally to throw the ball, but also he can create touchdowns on the ground. He can scramble. Aaron Rodgers obviously has a better arm, but coming out, his arm was pretty similar to Teddy. But just in terms of scrambling ability, I mean, obviously Rodgers is like much more accurate downfield and stuff. But in terms of scrambling ability, that was a pretty apt comparison, both in terms of the way they thought about it, the way they started or why they started, and the level of athleticism that they generally had. If he doesn't have that anymore, he's losing an asset. So that's a fair way to frame that, but it was an unusual way to argue it from Chow.
Well, okay, so would it be fair to say that assuming a healthy Bradford and a healthy Bridgewater, we're looking at having a team with two extremely accurate passers who are one entirely legal hit away from ending their careers?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fun for the whole family.
This will not be stressful to watch at all this season without...
I actually don't know who has weaker knees. A recovered Teddy? Like, as of right now, I should be fair. As of right now, Teddy has weaker knees. But a recovered Teddy or a current Bradford? I don't know.
Would you rather have a toothpick or a paperclip supporting your knee? No. Speaks to the value of having a decent offensive line, or maybe not like the worst one. Like maybe someday TJ Clemmings will learn how to block anyone, literally anyone, and we may not have to dig deeper than our starters. Quarterback.
Yeah, well, both starters at quarterback.
Yeah. Oh boy. I think that's about it for news to cover this week. We did a pretty good job stretching that out.
Yeah. No, that was the problem with the show is that, we only do tangents at the beginning and the end. And so when there's very little Vikings news, it's pretty obvious. There's very little Vikings news, guys. I'm sorry. That's not my fault.
Well, we've got a couple of mailbag questions this week. Purple PTSD writes in, do you think Arif can make the practice squad over Horace Richardson?
No. What? They gave Richardson more money than they gave random UDFAs off the street. But if it was Moritz, I mean, still no, but I bet I know more about receiving than him.
You'd do better in the film room than he would?
Yeah, right, exactly.
You'd look better on paper? How do your Wonderlic scores compare?
He's an engineer, right? So Ooh. I'm not going to say I've clearly got a better Wonderlic than there's something with the language barrier. I mean, he's a very good speaker of English, but he's not a native speaker, so I've got that going for me.
So you're at least competitive.
Yeah, right. We've got competitive Wonderlic scores.
JZ Hoodie writes in, do you feel that you have tarnished the Norse Code brand with your little video, Parking Lot Football? A, not my video, Luke's video. B, strange how Luke didn't capture any video of my multiple pass deflections that definitely occurred. Ooh.
But that sounded sarcastic. They did occur.
It was a real thing.
Yeah, it was a real thing. No interceptions, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would have definitely just mentioned that right away. But, I did well for, all but 2 snaps.
Which, of course, were the ones that made it to video.
Yeah, right. I will say those 2 snaps probably more impactful in a football game than the snaps that I played with. Like, my PFF grade would have been high, but my overall performance would have been low. My passer rating allowed would have been abysmal.
He goes on to write, have any sponsors pulled out due to how embarrassing it is?
Turns out we gained one.
Exactly.
Thank you.
We are very proud to not have sponsors that are not listeners. We don't need MeUndies advertising because the Norse Code listener community supports this show, and I imagine still supports Arif. And if you would like to join that family, patreon.com/NorseCode or paypal.me/NorseCode.
Can I also just say that I'm very proud of the patience I showed at cornerback? Zach tried on his first run through, he tried a double move on me, and I didn't bite once. Everyone's telling me I was pressed up against him and that I should have jammed him. And I understand why you would say that. I think that's probably not a good idea on pavement, as we later found out a couple seconds later. And also, I don't want to lean forward when I'm learning how to play cornerback. I already found out what leaning forward could do. I just wanted to keep up with him, and if I missed the jam, I would have lost out entirely. So I want to say that my patience was excellent. Just throw that out there.
Well, you're if you subscribe to the theory that football is primarily played in the mind, then yes, I would say that you were probably much better than those 2 plays made it seem.
Yes, excellent. Okay. Chad Greenway also found the video, much to my chagrin. I don't know if you saw that, Dusty.
Did you hear about it from Chad?
Well, actually, no. Vikings territory quote tweeted Luke's video and was like, Chad, do you want to do this? And then Chad, do you want to write a blog that Arif is not as bad at football? Which, fair. And Chad was like, absolutely. And I think someone else, either I saw it when it happened or someone else told me that Chad had said that he wanted to write this blog. At which point I told Chad that he didn't know the play calls. So how could he write that blog?
Ooh. Snap.
Yeah, right? Come on, Chad.
Hoodie goes on. If your life depended on it, what board game would you pick that you know you could beat anyone else at?
Anyone else? I can't beat anyone else at any board game. I am pretty decent at chess. I have played a lot of Twilight Imperium, not related to Twilight the Vampire thing. It is an amazing board game. I don't know if I've ever won once. I've played it's like an 8-hour game. Now I've played weekends full of it with my stupid nerdy debate friends. I've never won a game, so I can't pick that one. My debate friends always beat me at Settlers of Catan. I don't play it often enough. They play online every day. They've got they've min-maxed how to play Settlers. I obviously haven't.
Ugh. Well, and that's so ridiculous because Settlers, there's such an element of randomness. You are, for better or worse, handcuffed to your draw. You can play optimally and still lose. Pretty easily.
I don't know about pretty easily, but yes, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, there is an element of skill and decision-making, and I think that element plays a greater role than chance, but chance can absolutely take you out of the game 100% with no ability for you to respond. I agree. Let's see. I play a lot of board games. I don't play any of them well enough that I can just play for my life against death.
If my life depended on it, I would probably pick Pandemic, but that's kind of like wishing for more wishes. That's like cheating. I will say though that, and I have the same problem that you do with the Twilight Imperium. I've had games of Axis and Allies where we didn't finish, that I was not obviously going to win, but I've played numerous games of Axis and Allies to completion, and I have never lost. I'm not saying that if every game I played, if I finished, I would win, but I've never lost at Axis and Allies.
I've only played 2 games of Axis and Allies. The first one involved my brother, your friend. That didn't go well. He had 8 years of experience in the real world and 3 years of experience in that game on me, and I was a child. But the second time I played involved my girlfriend and a couple of my roommates, and we were winning until he quit. So,
you see, I've had games where I was both winning until we quit and losing until we quit, and one of those games was against your brother, and I don't think I've ever officially beaten Arshad at Axis and Allies, and if I had, he would deny it. So
yeah, he's too clever for leaving evidence of a loss. See, I'm pretty good at the Battlestar Galactica game, but you don't really. That one's a difficult one to like say that you're good enough to like bet your life on, especially because house rules are such an important element to that game.
Yes.
So sorry, Hoodie, I'm not good enough at any particular board game to save my own life.
I don't think anyone is. I think the whole point of a board game is that there's like, even if you stink, there's enough random chance where somebody very good could lose.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of board games that emphasize a lot of skill, but no board games are interesting without an element of chance, and that element of chance usually has the ability to tank you. So yeah.
Well, and plus, like,
I think if it was...
If you're just
would you stake your life on the ability to win a randomly selected board game against a random person? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Well, but see, like, I feel like if you're playing for your life, then just your human nature can get in the way. Because, like, did you hear about the Go Master that was roundly thumped by AlphaGo, the Google Go playing algorithm? Well, so he wasn't like destroyed. I mean, he lost the first game by half a point, which is like the smallest margin you can lose by in Go. And he played the first like 100 moves almost perfectly. And he said in an interview after the 3 matches,
he like lost confidence afterwards, right?
Well, so
I thought he lost confidence afterwards and then got destroyed.
Well, what happened was he got about 120 moves in, and he was playing perfectly. He was using more time than the computer, obviously. The computer was like politely taking exactly 60 seconds to make every move. But it was also thinking like during...
What a jackass.
I know. But the computer was like allowed to think during the other player's turn. So realistically, it could have like made every move in less than a second. But at any rate, he got about 120 moves in, and he said that he started to feel like he might actually win. And his heart started like kind of racing, and he got excited, and then he made a couple of crucial mistakes. And and then he ended up losing that game by half a point, the smallest possible margin, which is fine because, you know, a computer doesn't care how much it beats you by. All it wants to do is win. And that loss was so demoralizing that he got rolled after the second game and was, you know, functionally useless for the third. And the lesson to be learned here is that our humanity is our own worst enemy. The computer, the unthinking, unfeeling, well, not unthinking, but the unfeeling computer will always win.
So this reminds me of an episode of The Next Generation. I know you know what episode I'm talking about. Do you not? It's the race of like super strategic aliens that shows up to the Enterprise to perform war games with Riker in command of one vessel and Picard in command of the other one. And in the meantime, there's like that galaxy's version, or the future's version, our galaxy, the future's version of chess, that he's like an international grandmaster or whatever at, and he's like basically never lost to a non-whatever his race is. And everyone's like, oh, Data, you should play him. And Data loses. And then at the end of the episode, Data plays again against this like super whatever, and the game goes on for like hours, and the super whatever just quits because Data was playing perfectly in order to not lose.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. And he gets all frustrated at the end. He accuses Data of basically cheating.
Yeah, right. Violates the spirit of the game. And Data would not choose to advance.
Data's like, whatever, you were going to kill us all. Like, that's... No. Austin at Skull Blink 182 writes in, if the objective is getting schwasted on a budget, what is your beverage of choice? Both beer and spirit.
extraordinarily appropriate tweet for that Twitter handle.
Right? Fully in character, if a gimmick account.
Dusty, you could answer this way better than I could.
I mean, I guess you can, like, any beer that comes in a 30 pack is probably going to be your best beer option. I guess
there's a couple, right?
I guess regionally, Hamm's and Miller High Life are probably the most appropriate. I remember when I was in college, this was like when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But when I was in college, one can of Hamm's cost about 30 cents, which,
Jesus.
That's
dangerous.
You and two of your friends could combine forces and have a pretty decent Friday night. As far as spirits, it's an unpopular opinion, and be careful. But if you're actually trying to get wasted on a budget, you can't beat Everclear.
Oh wow, Dusty.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
But I mean, but that's not fun. Like you can drink 2 shots of Everclear and then embarrass yourself if that's really what you're trying to do. But man, don't do that.
I recommend Kirkland brand anything.
Ooh, yes. That is a much more responsible choice. And actually, Costco's wine selection is for the classy gentleman who is attempting to get wasted on a budget. You can get some pretty nice Bordeaux's actually for like the $10 to $12 range. So you can sip on that with your pinky up without breaking the budget.
Is wine drunk really wasted?
I mean, you pass out and you wake up with a headache. So I guess yes.
I think it's too cultured for wasted.
Yeah, I'll just put a little splash of Everclear in there. That'll get you where you're going.
Right. This wine seems good, but it's missing something. Pours Everclear.
What it's missing is some 95% alcohol. Oh boy. ZenCupid at ZenDBP writes, and has there been any information on Michael Floyd? Has he participated in OTAs to this point?
Yes, I'm pretty sure he has. This is how disconnected I am from OTAs sometimes. But I'm pretty sure he has. There's an article up again, 1500 ESPN, Matthew Collar, about the competition that Michael Floyd, in particular, will be having with Laquan Treadwell. So we knew going in that Michael Floyd was able to transfer his house arrest from Arizona to Minnesota, and he is allowed to go to work under house arrest. And so, yes, he should be at OTAs. And I'm pretty sure he is.
And he's got his old buddy Kyle Rudolph looking out for him.
Yeah, they're living at Kyle's house with, I think Kyle has twins, also a wife.
I don't know why that's so funny.
I think the way I said it.
Also a wife.
Also a wife. Well, it's just, I know my girlfriend will be weirded out if, like, I was like, yeah, my buddy with, like, a couple of Deweys is just hanging out at our house till he gets his life on track.
If Luke was a degenerate and just, like, moved into your place.
If Luke was slightly more of a degenerate, yes.
Well,
just only a little bit more. Luke's on the edge, which is what makes him so fun.
He's only 2 DUIs away from being an ersatz Michael Floyd.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if I was like, yeah, Luke's gonna live with us till he gets his life back on track. Oh, does he have a job? Oh yes, it pays pretty well. Why is he living here? Oh, so he doesn't, get into trouble. Oh.
Well, so why is that your responsibility? Well, because I'm his friend and we work together. Well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, we work together. We were roommates once, right? Luke and I were roommates at Mobile, Alabama. We were roommates in Mobile. Kyle and Michael Floyd were roommates at Notre Dame.
Now, see, this seems to me like a perfect spinoff for the Heismen.
So, listeners, if you're not aware, a couple of years ago, we created a sitcom starring Vince Young and Reggie Bush about it was mostly about a metaphysical discussion regarding whose Heisman Trophy is it if Reggie Bush was stripped of the Heisman, but instead of just not having a Heisman that year, they gave it to Vince Young, who was second in the voting, obviously. And what that means, if Reggie Bush gets an identical or near identical Heisman, perfect in every physical way to the actual Heisman Trophy, it has all the names on it, except, of course, it says Reggie Bush instead of Vince Young. The only difference being potentially that somewhere on it or somewhere near it, when it's being displayed, it says he received the most votes, which is true. He received the most votes. And they would be roommates, Vince Young and Reggie Bush. And Reggie Bush would display the fake or real Heisman, the one that he acquired because he got the most votes as the best player in college football that year. If you display it in the room, that a shared living space that they have together. So that was a sitcom. We made that after having a discussion about whether or not those Heismans qualified for a discussion about Theseus's ship, the fabled Greek ship that, as it broke down over time, you replaced parts of it, with hey, this wood's rotting, we replaced this plank. At what point, when you replace and repair parts of it, is that ship no longer the ship it originally was? Is it always the same ship, even when it's been 100% replaced? If you built a new ship out of the replaced parts or whatever, out of the parts that were taken out, would that be a more true Theseus ship? So we decided that was true for the Heisman, the 2005 Heisman, I think, with Reggie Bush and Vince Young. Anyway, now Michael Floyd and Kyle Rudolph can live in this fantastical sitcom universe that we've created involving Vince Young and Reggie Bush sharing a house together under the specter of a lost or twice remembered Heisman Trophy.
Exactly. The boys next door, and then Kyle Rudolph's wife can be in it too. It'll be like the spinoff of the Cosby Show, Different World. Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I was thinking the spinoff of Cheers, Frasier.
Ooh, that's actually probably much better now that Bill Cosby is, disgraced.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be the Frasier to the Heisman's Cheers. I would totally watch that show. I would watch both of those shows. Such a good name
for the Heismans is such a good name for
the Heismen with an E.
Yeah, the Heismen.
and then the intro music, just like the opening credits, like start with just like a close up of the two trophies and like pan back to like Reggie Bush and Vince Young like frowning at each other with arms folded.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And whenever someone visits, they like, and this is the Heisman that I won. Very loudly.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Both of them say the same. Yeah, exactly. And then Kyle Rudolph comes over and is just like doing Kyle Rudolph stuff. Michael Floyd is the irascible party boy.
Michael.
Oh, Michael.
That's our Michael.
Gosh darn it. The opportunities for hijinks are nearly endless.
Just like an episode where the very end you finish on a freeze frame of like spaghetti and meatballs all over Michael Floyd's head. The whole upturned. Shrugging his shoulders in shoulder pads, of course.
in full pads, no helmet.
Right. Because that's where the bowl is.
Pouty lower lip. Yeah, exactly. This isn't my helmet. Kyle Rudolph is belly laughing. Oh, man. Last question. Is Arif better suited as a nickel corner? How would Dusty fare covering a go route?
Well, I've already answered the nickel corner question above.
Yes.
Turns out I'm not good at sideline coverage.
I suspect that I would not be either. I have decent sprint speed, but basically no gas tank. Like as long as the route was like 20 yards or less, I might not get like grossly burned. But that's about the best I can do.
I was under the impression, okay, I've been so bitter about this. I got to let it go.
And so we're going to start and end the show with your 5 seconds of shame.
Just look, I was under the impression that at some point we'd run a 40. I'm still confident I would win that 40, despite the fact that Zachary Bennett plays pickup basketball at least once a week, if not more often, and I do not exercise.
So, like, so really, you didn't want a football game, you wanted a combine.
40, and then we would play a little bit of football. We only played football.
So you would have rather had like a pro day than a football game.
Oh yeah, obviously.
That's great. Well, in the event that we ever catch a Vikings game together, maybe we can mark out a 40 in the parking lot and maybe do cone drills.
Yeah, that sounds good and not dangerous.
That's not a terrible idea at all. I think that's going to do it. Actually, was there an email question that I wanted to...
Oh, there definitely was an email question. Hold on, we got to find it.
Well, I know there was a couple, but I wasn't sure if we've already covered it. I know Matt in Wisconsin wrote in. Matt in Wisconsin writes in, I listened to the latest Norse Code and then went out and watched the slow-mo Teddy clip that the Vikings released. There's only one appropriate response to that clip. Nice try, Melissa. Yes, Matt.
So good.
That is correct.
We also got one from...
Oh, yeah, Pike Street Video.
Pike Street Video.
Is Dalvin Cook more likely to dominate his rookie season like Zeke or have some growing pains in the NFL?
I think in between the two, actually. I think that it is not... I don't think he's going to dominate like Zeke did. One of the elements that helped Zeke dominate is that, fantastic offensive line.
Yeah,
and I don't want to take that away from Ezekiel Elliott. I think that he played extremely well, and he played as one of the best running backs in the league, regardless of that. But it certainly was a big component to him dominating, right? Instead of merely playing well. That clearly is not the case in Minnesota. The second thing, I think, is that Dalvin Cook was not nearly as good of a prospect as Zeke was coming out. He's just a very good running back. But as to your second question, can he be the spark in the offense that we need? Yeah, I think that he could be a critical component of the Vikings offense such that they'll actually be diverse enough to do stuff, right? Because the Vikings couldn't run the ball. And for the first time in a long, long time, I think they were in the bottom half of run play percentage. Were they dead last? Anyway, I mean, which would make sense, right? Because they couldn't run the ball. This is the first time in over a decade. Even when the Vikings didn't have Adrian Peterson as a result of hitting a child, they still had a high percentage of runs. It was the first year that they didn't. So, yeah, insofar as they have the capability to do multiple things, they've got multiple weapons, more weapons for Sam Bradford in the passing game, more options when they line up at the line of scrimmage and try to figure out whether or not they want to audible to a run or audible to a pass. Yeah, I think it's going to be an important element of the offense, and it should spark the offense to potentially be sort of in the top half. And if you've got a top 5 defense and a top half offense, you've got a really good chance of making the playoffs. More difficult in a division if Green Bay is playing well, but you got a really good chance.
I certainly hope so. I mean, it's just like with the offensive line last year. It'd be very difficult for our run game to be worse than it was last year. Like that's like the 100-year flood of bad offensive line and bad run game. But, the two are so inextricably linked that I guess it kind of makes sense that when one is awful, the other will be too. Well, right. At least when the line is awful.
One of the best running seasons ever, 2012 Vikings. One of the worst running seasons ever, 2017 Vikings. I think we had that combination that you're talking about. In 2012, you had both a good run-blocking offensive line and a good running back. Great running back. And last year, we had a combination of ineffectual running, and I'll still say that Jerick McKinnon's ineffectual running was brought in part by injury. He did improve later in the year after he healed up, and an ineffectual offense. I think you need both elements. of having a poor running back situation and a poor run blocking offensive line to have. At one point, the Vikings had the worst yards per carry since the 1932 Giants. They did overcome that, but like, still, the how far back until someone is this bad rating still, I think, went to the 70s. So it was really bad. And I think it's a combination of running back and offensive line, like you said, just like in 2012, it's a combination of great running back and great offensive line. Because imagine if Barry Sanders had gotten, excellent run blocking. He would have put up an Adrian Peterson season instead of a bunch of really, really good seasons.
So there you have it. And that will conclude the mailbag and consequently this episode of Norse Code. What are you working on for the next couple of weeks, Arif?
Well, I got to double check. I think Barry Sanders actually did have a 2,000-yard season, so maybe that wasn't fair.
To the interview.
Yes, he did. I'm dumb.
Oh, there we go. Oh, man, come on.
I'm so dumb.
Fired.
And 6.1 yards a carry. Even better.
Gee, wow.
I just put that out there, and I was like, wait a second.
Wow. Averaged 128 yards a game.
Not bad.
That's fine.
Yeah, take it.
That's probably fine.
Yeah, so that's the football expert you're listening to. Anyway.
In other news, Barry Sanders was very good.
Who would have put together more 2,000-yard seasons? I would say that. How about that? What am I working on? I'm working on the training camp guide.
Excellent. Yeah, it's getting to be about that time. Plus, I mean, you're a very busy person in the media. You will be heard on the actual terrestrial radio, as well as a smattering of podcasts between Wide Left and Zone Coverage and so on and so forth.
Yeah, as soon as we hang up, I'm probably going to call in, 10 minutes from now, to KATE Radio, Albert Lee, which I appear on generally every week, which is cool. And I'm going to be writing more at zonecoverage.com.
So there's that. You can look forward to us offering the training camp guide once it nears completion. This is just the first of what will likely be many plugs for what is truly an essential primer to the beginning of every Vikings season. And it's they're worth hanging on to, just year in and year out, because there's historical tidbits and we were there when moments like, back in the Christian Ponder days, back before Teddy and his skinny knees betrayed us all.
Yeah, back in the days when Arif forgot that Barry Sanders ran for 2,000 yards. Man, I really screwed that up.
That's okay. At least you admitted it, and we were able to correct the record in like 5 seconds.
Yeah, as soon as I said it, I was like, something's not right about literally what I just said.
Arif's spidey sense was tingling. We were able to get that corrected. Hall of Fame, Pro Bowl 10 times, All-Pro 6 times, MVP Barry Sanders.
Good running back.
Probably fine.
Probably did all right.
He was just fine. All right, so we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Norse Code for you. We'll get together then. We'll have a good time then. We'll see you then. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Podcasts, or wherever else fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, who can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. Our intrepid producer and occasional co-host James Pagachnik can be found on Twitter at Big Mono or curating the official Norse Code Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN. The number one intern for the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings is Carson Schubert, who can be found on Twitter at Radio Rubin. I'm your host with a firm grasp of the obvious, Dusty O'Connell, and my name is my handle on Twitter. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, your one-time donation can be made at paypal.me/NorseCode, or a recurring monthly contribution can be made by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. Please visit our website, norsecodepodcast.com, where you'll find links to our Facebook and YouTube pages, along with the episode archive and some other good stuff. And any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can be emailed to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. And on behalf of the entire Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.